my
This
team
conference will
about,
now be recorded.
yeah, I'll connect with the OpenY team about having this posted onto the YouTube channel. And what we're going to be talking about with analytics is just sort of the basics, right? Because half the battle is getting it to work, and then the other part is establishing specific goals for your website and setting it up to how you need it to work. So what I'm going to do is I'll share my screen real quick. And now if everybody can see the various windows I have open. So many windows, guys. I apologize. I know everybody has a billion tabs, but we all feel the need to apologize for our tabs. So the way that I would get started and would point everybody is the first thing that you need for an analytics account or to get Google set up is to have a Google Marketing Platform account set up. So it's pretty easy if you already have a Google account for your personal or for your association. I believe that the URL for that would be marketingplatform.google.com. And you can sign up here or to any of the individual pieces of that platform and get your account set up. So once you've signed in and you've created a marketing platform account, then you can follow up with the steps that I outline here. So the first thing, and the way that I implement Google Analytics is actually through another part of the Google Marketing Platform system called Google Tag Manager. And for those who may not be familiar with it, Google Tag Manager is a great way for you to enable enhanced tracking features or even embed custom JavaScript onto your website. We use Google Tag Manager for a lot of our digital ads. So anything with, we're not doing any advertising right now, but when we were doing our digital advertising, we were doing things like Facebook ads or Google ads and integrating it through Tag Manager. So I already have a Google Tag Manager account and a Google Tag Manager or a Google Marketing Platform account set up. So this is what this looks like for me. If you currently don't have a Google Tag Manager account set up, or you don't have anything configured on this will just look blank. And you will need to go up here to the right where it says create account. Now, an account would be something like your association name. So we'll call this David's YMCA. It's a very, very independent branch. And you can name your container whatever you want. The container is basically the site or the digital property that you want to embed your tags on, or you want to put your analytics on, you want to enable your digital ads on. This is what enables the tracking code that you would then put into your virtual Y site. Since I'm tracking a website, I am going to select the web platform. And normally you would put your website name, but since I don't have a domain name set up, I'm going to select demo site and then click on the blue create button. Lots of legalese for you to agree to. This is primarily talking about GDPR, about third-party tags, all that fun legal stuff that you have to agree to use this software. And then what you will get when you enable your tag manager, when you set that up, is you'll get all of this nice script gobbledygook that we will not end up needing. What you will need is this little ID number right up here, this GTM-N869P3W, or whatever it is for you when you set up your Google Tag Manager account. So we're just going to copy that and head into my very robust virtual Y demo site. And when you're logged into your virtual Y site, you will need to make sure that you have the Google Tag Manager module enabled. So this is just the piece of functionality that allows you to embed Google Tag Manager without any code. So if you're looking for this or any other module in the back end of your virtual Y site, this field underneath the blue Install New Module button will appear, and I'm just going to search for Tag Manager, and right here, this is checkmarked. If it weren't checkmarked, if you see this and there's not a check mark, you would just click on it and then click install. And then if you didn't see Google Tag Manager here, your developer partner would be able to help you get this installed. This is a pretty well used module, so it should be a pretty simple setup on the developer side. Then what you will want to do is, if you have access to this configuration tab up here, you'll go down to where it says System, and then down here to where it says Google Tag Manager. And remember, I was making a reference to the container in Google Tag Manager. This makes reference to that container back here. So when you click on the blue Add Container, you can label this anything you want, but that little code that you copied from here goes in this box here. And what this also does too is you have the ability to exclude or limit which pages on your site Google Tag Manager will work on. So if you don't want it to run in your administration interface, you would enter the page path or the page URL back here, similar to how you do for a website alert. So it would be the everything after the slash in your domain name, and then you would use an asterisk as a wildcard. So anything that begins with admin is going to be excluded. We'll click on this blue Save button. And as always, it's a good practice to, whenever you enable something new, to clear your cache. So you can do that by going to Configuration, Development, and then Performance. And the magic button is right here. Depending on your hosting or configuration, that might take a little bit, but it will be done when the page refreshes and you see that little cache is cleared. The next thing that we will want to do is go back into Tag Manager and click on this white preview button. We're going to click the Start Preview button. And when you enter into preview mode, what this enables on your site is what's called the debugging mode, where it allows you to see, whether or not Google Tag Manager is working on your site. So if I click on this Back to Site button here, I will now see this Tag Manager console down here, where any tag that I would enable down here for analytics tracking or whatever would show up, and it would tell me whether or not it's firing. We're not going to get into details about what all this means, but if this is showing up, then you've installed Google Tag Manager properly. So before I move on, does anybody have any questions about installing Google Tag Manager? Was that fairly straightforward? Any questions related to installing Tag Manager? And I can't see anybody right now since I'm sharing my screen. So if you have a questions, you can just speak up. Otherwise, I will keep on going. All right, that's perfect. The one thing that you will need to take note of in order to get this thing to show up is you will need to make sure that you have third-party cookies enabled. So I'm in Safari right now. If you're on a Windows device or a different browser, this will look different for you. But right here, there is a checkbox that says prevent cross-site tracking. If this box is checked, then my tag manager won't show up at all. So for whatever that is for your browser, you will just need to disable that after you have created your container so that this little debug mode will show up, this little preview right here. We're going to turn preview mode off and move on to the next step, which is actually getting the analytics set up. Right here, I have an analytics account set up, but if you haven't done it before, you will go to google.com/analytics to create a new marketing platform account, or to create a new analytics account, you would click on this blue start for free. Otherwise, if you've created your marketing platform account, you would click on this sign into analytics button. Now, what this is going to take me into is my admin interface. And if you have another account or another property you're managing that's just kind of been handed to you and you're seeing a bunch of data in here instead of this admin interface, the admin options are always going to be in the bottom left with this gear icon. So what I'm going to do now is create a brand new account, and the Google Analytics account is referring to the website property that you're managing and not to your personal account. So if you have a marketing platform account, then you can have multiple analytics accounts that you're managing. I know that's a little bit confusing, but each individual web property that you're managing has an analytics account set up for it. So following the steps here, this should be a little bit more clear, but there's documentation online, and if there are follow-up questions after this demo is over, we can definitely talk about it. The first thing I'm going to do is just give it a name. I'm going to call it Virtual Wide Demo. And down here, I will see all of these options to share my data with Google, turn any of these on or off, and then you click the next button. Since we're measuring a website, this defaults to measuring a website. So you would click next. And then I would call this my website's name. So this is Virtual Wide Demo. And your website URL would be, HTTPS or HTTP, whatever your virtual wide website name is, and you put it into here. I don't have a domain name. I've got an IP address. So I'm going to put that in there. You can choose your industry. I don't think they've got health and beauty and fitness. That's what I've chosen before, but whatever that means to you, whatever best fits your WISE configuration. Down here, you can select your reporting time zone, and then you create your Google Analytics property. You accept the terms of service. And now that you've created your account and your property, you now have a Google Analytics tracking ID. And it's this that we're going to put into Google Tag Manager. So before we go, we move on, do we have any questions related to getting to the Google Analytics tracking ID? Perfect. So just like we did with the GTM tracking ID, you're going to want to copy the tracking ID for Google Analytics and then move back over into Google Tag Manager. We're not going to get too deep into the terminology right now, but we are going to set up a variable, and the variable is simply going to be a tag that we use to represent our Google Analytics tracking ID. So down here, this should be in the built-in variables. Am I getting this correctly? It may not be correct. Might be getting my terminology mixed up a little bit, so I apologize for that. We'll start off by configuring a tag and click on new, and we're going to call this Google Analytics. We'll click on the tag configuration, and right up at the top it says Google Analytics Universal Analytics. We're going to click on that and set this up as a tracking type or as a page view. What this is basically going to do is it's going to, on every page, track the page view and everything associated with it. So it's using Tag Manager to pull in all of your analytics data. And this is where you would set up that variable that I was talking about before. We'll title the Google Analytics settings. We will put that tracking ID in here. We won't worry about the more settings, and we will click Save. And once we click on Save for that, we will then need to set up a trigger. A trigger is when basically an indication or a prompt for that analytics tracking to fire on a particular page. So here we just have one option to start, and that's on all pages, which is what we want. We want this to track every single page that is viewed on our virtual Y site. And then we will click on Save. So you will know that you're done when you have your tag set up as Google Analytics and as an all pages firing trigger. We can then click on the preview and click on the start preview and then go back to our virtual Y site. We'll click on refresh and we'll click on refresh again. And now you will see that Google Analytics is firing on this page. And as a second or a double check of that, you can then go back to your analytics and move over to the left hand navigation to this clock right here under reports, real time, and then overview. And what this will show you is that we have an active user on the site, and that active user is me. Now, at first, it may take a second for the active page to load properly, but if your analytics is firing when you see it in Tag Manager debug down here, or you see a visitor on your site here, then you know that your analytics has been set up correctly. And then what you can do is you can go back into Tag Manager, click on Submit, add a version name, which would be Google Analytics added. And then you would click on Publish. So now I'm going to leave preview mode, but once that has been set up on your virtual Y site, you will now have the ability to do two things. Number one is to track your page views and clicks and sessions, all of that information in your Google Analytics account. But if there's anything else that you want to do with your virtual Y site, then you will be able to track that in your Google Analytics, or you will be able to add some additional digital marketing tools to track in your Google Tag Manager account. So are there any other questions before we wrap things up for today? All right, Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for jumping on to the virtual Y meetup today. If you have any questions, just find me in Slack, and we'll see you next time.